This minifigure is getting locked inside a LEGO dungeon, and the only way to escape is by descending down floor after floor of monsters, traps, puzzles, and bosses so she can get the key at the bottom before she runs out of time. But if there was anyone who could do it, it's Barbara the Barbarian, especially with the help of her cousin Chuckles. This first floor of the dungeon I built is full of over 1,000 tan studs I'm using as sand, and there's these weird indents all over the walls and floor. It looks like they'll need something to do with the ruby red scorpion to open the way down, and based on that cryptic message up there, Barbara and Chuckles started sifting around in the sand to find it. They dug up plenty of scorpions, just not the one they were looking for, and each of them took 1 heart of damage trying to fend them off. If either of them reach 0 hearts, they're gonna end up like that guy, so they need to be extra careful with the 9 they have left. Chuckles started squashing the little freaks left and right, until he found one that wasn't so little. This was the first boss of the dungeon, and they had to work together almost flawlessly to bring it down, with Barbara's trusty old sword landing the final blow. And that caused every panel they had activated to open up, spilling sand into the room. But they still don't have the one they need. With no way out, it was looking like this would be a pretty short video, until Chuckles spotted the red scorpion at the last second. That was a little too close for comfort. And now Barbara only has 8 hearts left to go down 7 more floors. The next of which is this frozen ice level. I used a bunch of snowflakes and layered these transparent bricks to give the walls a nice frosty look. But it's missing something. Actual ice blocks. I tried using these plastic cubes from a game called Don't Break the Ice to create perfectly square-ish ice blocks. And we'll throw some Lego-shaped ice in there for good measure. And the button to open the next door is frozen inside one of the blocks up on this ledge. A lot of video game dungeons seem to have the exact same boring sliding ice block puzzles in them. We're not doing that. Instead, this square on the floor seems to be giving off a considerable amount of heat. If they slide an ice block on top of it, it melts and they get whatever item was inside it, like an ice pick, ladder, giant yeti monster, a whale, a wave. There's no time to melt this one. Barbara held the yeti off the best she could, while Chuckles made his way up the ladder to the button. But it was frozen to the floor. He used the ice pick to hack away at it as fast as he could, until it finally broke free.
Over here!
Well, with that thing taken care of, they were finally able to melt the ice, revealing the button to unlock the next floor. The subscribe button. Barbara pressed it and was allowed to go down, but Chuckles over here didn't want to subscribe, like most of you. He just stood there stubbornly while the frigid temperatures started to eat away at him. If he didn't get out of there soon, he'd end up like that guy, who probably wasn't subscribed either.
Fine.
There we go. The door finally opened for him too, and he took the steps down to join Barbara on the next floor, which was extremely dark. What was that? They tried swinging their weapons around blindly at this mystery monster, but obviously that didn't work. Chuckles started looking around for another button he'd be forced to press, but he found a glow shroom instead. These things use bioluminescence, aka an LED powered by this mess of wiring underneath, to light up when someone touches them, letting them see a bit more of the room they were in.
There's another one.
Now the whole floor was lit up, waking someone from their slumber. We're gonna call this guy Gloom Shroom. And unlike all the other mushrooms living in my Lego city called 25ville, he's not so friendly. Recently, this ancient looking structure emerged from the mountaintop spring. No one knows who built it, but Barbara could just feel the call of adventure beckoning her inside. She wanted to be the one to conquer the dungeon and find whatever was at the bottom, but she couldn't do it alone. She dragged Chuckles along for moral support, but he never would have come if he had known they'd both be locked inside with no way out but to go deeper and deeper into the heart of the mountain. Well, this floor looks pretty easy. The valve to open the door is right out in the open. Yeah, just kidding. The lever they need is all the way over here, and they'll need to use the valve to raise and lower the water level to reach it. It's pretty clear that I'm basing this dungeon way more on classic Zelda dungeons instead of the new Dungeons & Dragons minifigures that LEGO made, but I didn't want to leave them completely out to dry. So if someone can find all 12 hidden throughout this video, I'll eventually build another dungeon for them on my second channel. There we go. Uh-oh. Barbara heard Chuckles screaming and swam all the way back to find that he'd been snatched up by a kraken. Shout out Chubby Bots for the genius technique of using a T-Rex body for the head and tails for the tentacles, which Barbara started slicing off one by one. She just barely saved Chuckles from drowning and or becoming lunch, but they're both hurting after completing this first half of the dungeon. Let's just hope the last 4 floors aren't even harder. Knock on wood. They found themselves in a secluded underground grove, with all its plants being forced to adapt to the negative amount of sunlight they're getting way down here. This poor little sapling looks like it's struggling to grow with all these weeds popping up. So Barbara started weed whacking while Chuckles got some water for it, except he ended up watering one of the weeds instead. It grew into a giant Deku Baba from Zelda games.
And I love how it uses the banana costume piece as the tongue.
But Barbara bombarded the Baba's banana. Bam, boom, bop. I had way too much fun writing that line, but with all the weeds gone, they were able to actually water the sapling this time, and it grew into a massive tree, which for some reason seems familiar.
My name is Gordon Treeman.
Gordon dropped all sorts of juicy lore for the cousins, explaining the magical seal that was recently placed upon the dungeon.
Anything that perishes within these walls turns to cursed black stones.
They thought back to all the monsters they had defeated to make it here, and the absolute mess they've left behind.
You must leave your weapons here to proceed. The fewer monsters you slay, the fewer bricks he can lay.
Who's he?
Please.
Reluctantly, Barbara left her trusty sword behind. Chuckles just hid his hammer in his pants, but Gordon didn't see it, so he finally let them continue downward, bruised, battered, and almost defenseless now.
Be careful, young ones.
This next floor is probably the closest thing to an actual dungeon, with stone brick walls and different cells where prisoners are locked up with cartoony balls and chains. This key must go to one of these doors, so they started testing each one.
Nope. Nope. Nope.
I guess one of the captives was still alive. Chuckles frantically started testing the rest of the doors and gave Barbara his hammer to ward off the 3-headed hound.
Nope.
They both rushed inside just in time. Except they weren't alone in this cell either. Oh, there you are, Perry. He was a Paralympic athlete that got kidnapped from the games by a horde of weightlifters. They locked him up for life down here, forcing him to destroy his precious gold medal in a fiery furnace so he could turn its remains into this sword. It's said that only gold mined from the heart of Mount Olympus can forge a blade mighty enough to vanquish the beasts of ancient Greek legend. Like that one! Barbara asked Perry if she could borrow his sword, but he said she could just have it. He turned his ball and chain into his own weapon, and the 3 of them braced themselves for battle as Chuckles slowly unlocked the door. But Cerberus took one look at that sword and bolted out of there. Well, that was easy. Perry even decided to join the squad, since 3 heads are better than 1. Most of the time. And he busted open a way down for them. This penultimate floor is filled with molten lava, and the only way across is by jumping between these precarious floating rocks. It's just like all the times Barbara and Chuckles played the floor is lava as kids, except now the floor is actually lava. One wrong move and they're toast. But as long as they're all extremely careful, they should make it with no problem. Okay, well now they have to jump and dodge the dragon's fireballs before it destroys the rocks they're standing on. Oh no. Without that rock, there's no way they can jump that far. They're trapped.
Anything that perishes within these walls turns to cursed black stone.
Chuckles!
He turned himself into a pile of black stones, which gave Barbara and Perry a way to make it across.
Chuckles.
Perry grimly told her that they had to keep moving downwards, but please spam the comments with RIP Chuckles to honor his sacrifice. They had made it to the final floor. This was what they had come all this way for. It was the reason Barbara even brought Chuckles along in the first place.
A bunch of bones?
There was nothing. No treasure, no secret, not even a way to escape this awful place. It was over.
You know, Giggles.
Chuckles.
Sorry, Chuckles. He wouldn't have wanted you to just give up.
Barbara knew he was right. Maybe there was something they were missing. One last puzzle they needed to solve. She and Perry dug through the pile of bones until they found all the pieces to make a skeleton. Then 2, then 3. 2 of them turned into harpies, who started swooping around like crazy. They grabbed the rest of the bones and used them to reassemble their leader, Ida, the Harpy Queen. She was the terrifying final boss of the dungeon, and she turned out to be another beast of ancient Greek legend. 4 chuckles! Barbara put her new golden sword to work against Ida, while Perry kept the little ones at bay. If they lost this fight now, their entire journey and poor Chuckles' demise would have been for nothing. It all came down to this. The dungeon was finally conquered, and the secret it was built to protect was revealed to Barbara and Perry as a reward. But they didn't have time to open it because the walls were starting to crumble. The dungeon was self-destructing. They have to get out of here fast. And with that cliffhanger, thank you so much for watching. All these floors took absolutely forever to build, so I really hope you enjoy. If you did, check out this video next, where I build floors going upwards instead of downwards. And they're actually connected. I never actually tried doing that with this one since they're all different sizes, but I guess here goes nothing.